So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Magic Man Pod. And this is the 21st episode, and I have the pleasure of having Mr. Rohit Vasudevan.
Thanks
Welcome,
for
coach.
having me. Thank you.
Welcome. So, first of all, I'll tell my equation with him, like how I got to meet him. 3 or 4 years ago, right? Now,
Yeah.
from now on.
2018?
2018 or 2017
Yeah.
mid.
17 mid, yeah.
I arrived at IJJ to train as a Spazzy white belt. And then a lot of my development happened at this gym, and it was spearheaded under Rohit. So I give him a lot of credit for that. So, coach, why have you disappeared from the social media?
This was, I think, right before I got engaged. Right before we got engaged is when, yeah. So
Both of you have like no social media.
both of us
okay,
don't, yeah.
okay.
So it was just like, I realized that we're just scrolling for nothing. Right? And I realized that it's also giving me a lot of stress because I was at a point where just scrolling through those reels or whatever it is that you watch, you look at it and you get stressed out.
Right.
Like it reached a point like that.
And you see other people. Oh, we have a visitor. Is he in the frame?
She might be.
Oh, she. Sorry.
Hi, Patch.
Hi. Come in the podcast. Yeah, very wholesome podcast, guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What was I saying?
You were talking about social media and how it,
Oh yeah,
the doom
correct. Yeah.
scrolling makes
So
you
I was
feel.
scrolling and I was just getting stressed out looking at, and that's the problem, looking at bullshit.
Yeah.
Because it's just random blue belts and purple belts and nothing against them at all, right?
Yeah.
They can experiment and put it out there, but it's on me to look at it and get stressed about it. But I would look at it and I would be like, man, this is definitely not going to work.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
Probably
why am
one
I
of-
investing my
Probably
time
one
in
of
this?
my videos.
No, of course not you. So, but just generally, I'm like, and it's filled with that. Like, it's
A lot of
90%
garbage.
bullshit. I have to sift through that 90% bullshit to get to that 10%.
Wait till you find non-jiu-jitsu cringe content that
Oh,
that is
man.
on
So
Instagram.
that's the thing. On Insta, it was pretty much just jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And I realized that everything that happens there happens on YouTube. So I spend less time scrolling on YouTube.
So this is my point regarding this, that I want you guys to create these contents because you can counter all of these bullshit white belt and blue belt material. Even black belts, they post a lot of bullshit. And if
They do.
And I remember your reels used to be something which I would take like fucking 1 week to understand. Like the way you are moving from crab ride into a leg lock sequence is still there. Rohit/IJJ, right?
Yeah.
Guys, go watch those technique content that he has already created. But it's like just some next level matrix shit. So even to understand and how the body is moving. So if you keep posting that kind of content, if Devesh posts, if Dibuk posts, so all these guys have such high level of understanding that will benefit the Indian community especially, who are watching a lot of garbage.
I agree with you. But
Yeah,
at the
for your
same,
own
but at the,
mental health.
yeah, but one is my own mental health, and the other thing was I feel like some knowledge is just not for everybody.
You want to
Right.
keep it like secret?
Not
that kind of
secret,
stuff?
not secret at all. It's more like let the person seek it out, and they'll find what is required. Right. So I leave it to that on some level. There's no need to be like secret or not.
Bro,
In this day and age, it doesn't make sense at all. But more than anything, it's just that if they really want it, they'll come and seek it out. So I'm really not like interested in it as much.
Would you ever release a DVD of whatever you have worked on?
I would love to. That is something I've actually discussed with Vijay because I definitely wouldn't want to release a DVD without him because everything that I come up with, the first filter that it goes through is him.
So he'll be the Uki or he'll
No,
be
no,
like
no.
the
He's obviously going to share his insight as well because it's never me. It's always him and I discussing together.
experimenting rounds.
Yeah,
and-
constantly, and even like the filter goes like this. Vijay and I will discuss, and then we'll try it out on Bira.
Guinea pig.
Bira and Debo. We'll try it out on them, and then we'll try to do it on Devesh. That's where it'll fail miserably, and then we go back and like we fix this. And it used to be the same thing when you were there. It was Vijay and I would discuss, and
was
then we would
always
try
the
it on
guinea
you,
pig, bro.
right? And no, but you would always give us the unique reactions and. Because you had an understanding of what people were doing. And I think like that's what set you apart.
Yeah, and that came from just studying. Like when I came to your gym, you guys were studying a lot of Hafa Mendes and all those
Yes,
guys.
yeah.
You had subscription to his website from where
Initially, we just tried everything, and honestly, we gave up on everything after a month. So
I got the subscription and then I downloaded all the
yeah,
videos
you
of
got
the
that.
website
Yeah, exactly.
on a hard drive. So yeah, so let's say you have to suggest someone in your class or batch or people who are watching a good DVD to watch which will improve you, or like 2-3 good DVDs. What would you recommend to them?
I think to start off with this may seem stupid though. I actually got a lot out of Hickson's fundamental program, which he released. I think that's a good place to begin to understand
That's
just
gi?
how to put weight and stuff.
Okay.
It's gi, no gi, like I mean, it's just discussion of like concepts,
Okay.
and I think people should definitely watch that to understand how jiu-jitsu can be done. Um, a lot of Horger's content also.
Right.
I think everybody watches Gordon's stuff right now. My thing with Gordon is that, like I said, he can apply the things that he does in his division because he does everything. But when you go to a mature sport like wrestling, you never find somebody who is actually good at everything. You can't. They are good at specific things, but they know how to take the game to that specific thing, no matter what you do.
But don't you think at the higher weight class, those specific things also reduce? Like now you
It
can't
does.
do leg locks, now you
It
can't
does.
invert.
Exactly. Which is why he's able to apply that algorithmic way of
Right.
working. But if you see the lighter weight classes wrestle, it's
it's
completely,
different.
it's
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah.
It's complete chaos, and then suddenly they hit their move.
Yeah.
So you have to try and understand what that chaos is, and that is what like I intend to do. And I think to do that is to really understand it on a fundamental level first, and then pick a move, see how you gel with it, and then like find a way to hit that move from everywhere. And I think that is the best way to build knowledge.
What's the third one?
Sorry.
You said two good DVDs, right?
Oh,
Hodger
yeah.
Gracie was the second guy to
Hodger-
study. But Hodger and all, they don't release content, bro. That's the problem.
Yeah, I
with
mean,
them.
like whatever content I've found, like on Bilibili and whatnot, right? Like I've tried to just get all of that and just watch all of them to try and understand. And I think the third one is obviously like I think the gold standard is Gordon's DVDs. Just you can't avoid it because
Gordon versus Danaher, which one would you prefer? Danaher for concept, I feel, is the best.
Yes.
Gordon is more technique heavy. That's what I've observed.
I mean, let's put it this way: both of them. I
Same
think
school
because
of
they're
thought,
from
yeah.
the same school, and I feel like whatever Danaher's theories are, I think Gordon is obviously going out, testing them, and putting out like his twist on it, and like just some small stuff. So I think you can't go wrong over there. Like
I feel like you have to study both.
exactly
And
right.
it's too
so
much.
yeah, because you get the basic information there, and then you see how it's done in competition and so on and so forth. But again, all of this I would still take with a pinch of salt because, and watching guys like Preet is also important because
Preet Mickelson,
they
right?
they are the only ones who are doing stuff at the other end of the spectrum, which is give like complete defense oriented. And I think there's a lot of value for somebody who's let's say like 40 years old. They are going to get way more out of doing a Preet DVD than they are from a
Right.
from a Gordon
It
or
also
a
depends
Danaher
if you're
DVD.
competitive or not.
Exactly. If you're competitive, you need to be constantly aggressing and like going forward. So working on those offensive techniques and having a sound understanding of defense is enough. Whereas if you're 40 years old going against against someone who's like a good competitor,
Right.
Vijay is the perfect example. His defense is so sound, you can get to whatever position you want with him. You can't do anything.
He's like the BG Click of India.
Yeah.
That same exact character.
Exactly.
And I think every gym has that one guy who is like 40-year-old,
Yeah.
does the day job.
Except the only thing is he's not doing the same thing that I do, and that's what's important. And I feel like with Glick, he does the same thing that Danaher
That
does.
Danaher does.
Right. So and I think that also speaks about like what we were talking about, which is him having a stronghold over like what people should do.
And now Danaher is also coming up with to
Older
capture
man
that
DVD stuff.
market.
Yeah, he wants to. He
Jutsu
understands
for
that.
older
Yeah,
people.
Exactly.
Things like
But
that.
I think inherently, I think guys like Preet, I think are going to be way more beneficial for somebody who's 40 years old because they really get to the core of understanding jiu-jitsu. And I think at some point in your life, you will have to go there.
Right. So, coach, from that time, 2017 to 2023, now you have moved to a new location, new spot. How has your own game evolved as a competitor, as a person who is like training on a daily basis? Because you're also coaching simultaneously.
Yes. Yeah. So I feel the main transition, I think, back when you were there, and I think this is a podcast that I can actually get like personal on and everything.
Yeah.
I tried to control every element of training, and anytime it would go away from that, it would like I would start having like meltdowns and stuff like that, and you know about it too. And I mean, it just came from that place where I wanted to try and control everything, and I realized that that's not how it goes. So my major evolution has actually been as a coach more than anything, and understanding what the students needs and put their needs first, because for the entire time I felt that okay, I know that what these guys need to work on. It was always from that, and that was the biggest switch that happened, I felt. For myself, I guess I was pretty much focused completely on guard play at one point. That's how my evolution was.
And even the meta of jiu-jitsu at that point of time was that
Exactly, was
playing guard
basically
and
like trying to get inside position and get to the legs and everything. And on some level, I felt we're still playing catch up because every time since the start of the journey, it was 2012. It was like Rafael Mendez doing bolos and everything, and I'm catching up and I'm trying to like play that game. Then the same thing happened with the leg locks. Then post COVID was when we actually made a huge switch to wrestling, and I felt that most gyms were capitalizing on that whole of the game. But what I noticed was they were just taking like specific moves. What Vijay and I tried to do is we incorporated the philosophy of wrestling more into jiu-jitsu and applying it, and especially given that how grappling's rule set has evolved over the years, and we've favored ADCC as our prime focus pretty much. Um, Given that, it just made sense to be ahead of the curve this time as opposed to always playing catch up. So, wrestling was, I think, the biggest switch that happened, and we began uh, just organically, just watching matches. I realized that hand fighting was the most important thing. So, one year, what we did was we said we won't take any shots because that just like escalates it too much, and then things go out of control very quickly. So, we focused only on hand fighting, and I saw a lot of like progress in students, and then that's when I started teaching more and more and more wrestling concepts, and
Like
that's how it's grown.
this time around when I was here, I'm seeing like even the beginners have good general concepts
Exactly.
of posture, of
Yeah.
hand fighting.
Yeah.
So that is something like very unique to see, and yeah, this is how we can stay ahead of the curve because, as you said, because we were in India,
Yeah.
and here we get to see these moves only once they start hitting it in the competition.
Exactly, and by then we're already too late.
And by then they have already been practicing that in the
Yes.
gym, so we are always, or when the DVD comes out,
Correct.
things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's go back to that point that you said that your evolution as a coach, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in that phase of my coaching career right
Yeah,
now where I feel okay, these guys are white belts. I need to like
Yes.
I have a better vision of what they can think better for
Yes,
themselves,
yeah.
and I keep catching myself doing that a lot. Where I'll get frustrated that oh no, he's doing something else.
Yes,
He's trying
yeah.
to like go one sequence beyond the sequence that I've already told
Yes,
him.
yeah.
And then I realize oh no, I have to stop this because
Correct, yeah.
sometimes you also like curb creativity in some way or form, and that is
And that was exactly. See,
Yeah.
the thing is, when we first started, there were everyone under me just basically listened to what I said.
Right.
But then when you came in, you were bringing in a host of other kind of knowledge, and that threw me off a bit.
Okay.
Right. So, and I wasn't ready for that. And now looking back, it just seems so stupid, honestly, because I realized that it does stunt the student's creativity on his own to go and
Yeah,
explore,
yeah.
and I feel like that's where the major
Otherwise,
growth
you'll
is
end
happening.
up like a gym which only does leg locks, only
Exactly,
does
yeah,
top position,
exactly.
things
So
like that.
right now it's just this is the philosophy, just be creative, try and do something.
For me, it's also like the fun aspect that people enjoy, like doing all this stupid stuff. I know that it's
yeah,
stupid,
and
but
I think
they just enjoy
being
it.
stupid is part of the learning
Yes,
process, and you
yes.
shouldn't take that away,
Yes,
and that was very
100%.
important for me.
100%. Because we get these information, we get these tiny details after so much effort.
Correct.
We value it so much that sometimes we try to impose that
Impose
value
that
also.
exactly. So we've just gone away from that now. Yeah.
So that's a great reform. I think every coach has to go through, and this is not a situation with you or with me. It happens.
Yeah,
to every
I think it
coach.
happens to every person, and that's part of that evolution. And
Yeah.
if they don't recognize that, and then you end up, I feel like, not to
End
name
up
gyms,
with
but
a
you know some gyms that there are out
dictatorial
there.
approach
Yeah,
of training,
exactly.
which takes the fun away, and then
Correct.
you'll have a lot of students leaving you and or
Exactly.
just getting burned out or not enjoy the process, and that
Yes.
happens a lot. I've seen
Yeah.
that happening a lot.
True. Yeah, exactly that.
So, coach, also let's go back a little bit because I found this. I was listening to your last podcast, and I found this pretty interesting because both of us were inspired to take martial arts after a mugging incident.
Yes. Yeah.
That happened to me also in Delhi.
I remember. Yes. Yeah.
And that happened
yeah,
to you also
yeah,
here.
Yeah.
So I think.
Wait, but was that the reason you started? Actually, was that the first?
yeah, that's when I started searching that I need something to defend
Okay.
myself, and I
Got
was
it.
watching
Very
UFC
interesting.
at the
Very
same
interesting.
time.
Okay.
So that was a good. So what I was thinking is that maybe getting mugged is the best base for jiu-jitsu. you can just go to these random ass places, shady places, get mugged, and then
And
next
then
day you'll
that
have
switch is
motivation.
there. Like, okay, go.
Because otherwise, I see so many people who find it like by mistake. They come, train, and then they disappear. Like they
Correct.
don't
Yeah.
know the value of it
Yes,
until they
exactly.
have been
Until
those-
they've experienced a situation where they felt powerless. Because I felt like I thought I knew.
What exactly happened? Can you tell the viewers? If it's not traumatic for you.
It's not at all. It's not at all traumatic because it's part of my learning
Right.
experience. So I embrace it completely. So I say mugging because it's just easier to like pass on the information that way. But what exactly happened was a couple of friends and I were in Garuda Mall, which is in Brigade Road, and my friend who's much smaller than me, he was just looking at some random guy pointing out and saying, "Hey, listen, this guy looks like some guy from a video." That guy was drunk. He walked up to us and asked, like, "Hey, what the fuck are you pointing at?" and whatnot. And I kind of intervened and said, "Hey, listen, like, there's nothing going on and everything like that." But something triggered him. I don't know what happened.
These guys just looking for
His
a
friends, yeah, exactly. I think that's what it was. His friend took him away. So we went back upstairs, and then they come in with like a bunch of 7 guys, and they just start beating on me. And
7 guys?
7 guys. Like, there's one guy, I remember I took my phone out to call my friend. He kicked the phone out of my hand, and honestly, that was just a genius move. And that told me that okay, these guys have been in like multiple scraps. Obviously, this is something that they probably do on a daily basis. And what I was surprised was obviously one that no one lifts a finger. My own friends, I didn't expect them to because I know that they can't handle themselves in this situation. What I was also surprised was the mall security. All he came and said was, "Hey, take this outside."
What the fuck?
Yeah. So yeah,
you're
so by the
basically
time,
helpless, yeah?
yeah, exactly. By the time we went down, these guys were speaking in Tamil, and I ended up conversing in Tamil with them. And by the time we hit from the 4th floor to the ground floor, everything had just like pacified, and there was no need for me to like further egg this on. And then I also understand the consequences of doing that and everything, right?
And you were outnumbered as well. so
Exactly. So there's no point. And I know that this can just keep going on in a vicious cycle also. So I just let it go there, but I also understood that, okay, like learning how to defend yourself is probably like something of such utmost importance, which we are not taught in school or anything like that. So I picked it up just so that I can teach myself. And a similar incident happened to a friend as well. So yeah, from there it just led to me realizing that okay, maybe I can even make a difference to people around me.
So, coach, one thing which I admire about you, and I tell you also from time to time, is your ability to like predict meta shifts. So I remember, I'll tell you an example. I remember at 2018ish when we were training, we were doing a lot of bolos and all those
Yes,
things,
yeah.
and that's when Wormguard started to catch up.
Yeah.
And I was all into it. Nihal was all into
Yeah.
it. We used to do this all. Maybe Devesh also
Yeah,
was doing this.
yeah.
And then at one point we were sitting outside in the balcony, and you come and say, "Bro, this is all too bullshit. I think Gi Jiu-Jitsu is dead now. It's just bullshit. I don't want to train it." And next year, I think
Yeah.
same year the ADCC After Effects happens,
Exactly.
and everyone started
started doing Nogi. Exactly.
So
yeah.
that was the shift that I saw you predict. And
Yeah.
just in general, like when I see some technique in wrestling come up, which people are incorporating a lot,
Yeah.
I remember, we used to drill this back when
Yeah.
we started training with
Yes.
wrestling
Yeah.
in IJJ.
Yeah.
So how do you do this? Is just the general understanding of the game or what?
Honestly, I actually don't have an explanation for this. I have tried to think about this for myself. Why am I able to like predict this? I think the only explanation that this is what I've given myself. From playing basketball, I understood how the play unfurls. And this I didn't understand while I was playing basketball, but when I stopped. And I think having done my master's degree, I think that's where a huge shift happened in how I would try to analyze things and reverse engineer things. And I felt like that kind of, and these two together, I think, and understanding how the play unfurls, I think just led me to a point where I feel like sometimes I'm able to like predict what's going to happen next.
You can apply that in jiu-jitsu for sure.
Yeah,
if you
and it just
understand.
seemed to fit. I don't know. I honestly don't have an explanation for this.
Yeah, because I remember when you were talking about the leg lock game and everything, you were like, okay, but staying on top will also be equally important at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Because right now everyone.
And now everyone just, yeah, exactly.
And now
So
everyone is doing
now
that.
the game is,
But you know what's interesting about this? That you tell me that you never watch a lot of matches, you never study a lot
Yeah.
of instructionals, because these two things kind of predict the meta. Not even predict,
They
but
do.
they show the trends.
yes. So honestly, there was a point where I was watching like match after match and everything like that. That just helped me understand the reactions that people were doing. Off late, what I've been doing is I watch stuff and then I put it away for about 3 or 4 months, and then I come
What
back.
do you watch? You watch a lot of wrestling?
Off late, I watch only wrestling.
Okay.
That's like, I mean, it's come to a point where I prefer watching that over jiu-jitsu. But every maybe 3 to 6 weeks, let's say, I'll watch a jiu-jitsu match every now and then and see what they're doing, and I'll try to understand, have they caught up yet? Have they caught up to what I'm thinking about? So
Because this is the fact that Gordon also said at the 2019 ADCC probably
Okay.
where he won. He said that our sport is so amateur. You remember
It
this
is,
line?
it
He
is.
said because in a wrestling match, no 65 kg guy is ever beating us.
never,
88
it's
kg
never
guy.
going to happen, right? That itself shows that the sport is at a level of nascency, and the others also. I think someone like Gordon, given the guys that he's fighting, I feel like the knowledge, what the guys say is like, if you're more knowledgeable, you'll win. I think that's applicable in his division. I don't think when you start coming down to the lower weights like 66, 67, you find true specialists where I feel you cannot apply that meta. Honestly, I think I've gone back to that thing of just do one thing and be amazing at it and then build from there. And I think right now, if you choose leg lock, let's say, you're already behind. So the only thing that you can do now is wrestling and capitalize on it. So that's why we've taken that path.
Interesting, because I wanted to ask you another question. IJJ has one of the like best beginner fundamental programs that I've ever seen. Like anyone who transfers into your advanced class is already ready. He has
Yeah.
those basic skill
Yeah.
set, and something that I also try to do and experiment with it with my beginners class.
Yeah.
So what actually have you structured it on? Like, is it Gracie combatives? It is something that you teach as well, included in
I
it?
feel for the beginners especially, we make it seasonal. There's so the way I do things is I watch what the latest meta is, for example. I break that down and I structure, let's say, a training program for about 3 months, and they'll work on this.
Right.
And once I feel that it's starting to get stale, both in terms of like fun, or I feel like that they're at a certain level that they can apply these things, then I actually move back completely to like self-defense, let's say,
Right.
and we look at just the finer points of jiu-jitsu.
Okay. So you keep
Like
going
what
back
is the
and forth.
value of an underhook, how to use an underhook, just like very, very like basic stuff, how to put your weight in the right direction and so on. And we do that for about 3 months. And then we go back, and cycling back and forth like that seems to help the beginners. And honestly, this strategy has worked even with the advanced guys. I actually do this with the advanced guys also. We don't necessarily look at it only from a self-defense lens, but we try and apply those things still in our training as much as possible, because
This block-based training concept.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And-
I've heard this concept used by some of my friends who have come from, let's say, athletic background, like where they were doing distance run and things
Yeah.
like that. There
And then they
use this
supplement it
block-based
every now
training,
and then.
where they will train for 4 weeks just focusing on one specific goal, and then
Yeah.
4 weeks.
Yeah, that always seems to work better for human beings. I think the way we learn and everything like that, doing something and basically solving similar problems as opposed to the same problem.
Have you heard of this new approach that's making the wave?
What is this?
Ecological approach.
Okay, what is this? You have to catch me up.
This is so fun to talk about. I'll explain it. So basically, we do positional training, right?
Yeah.
If I just say and leave it there, all the ecological guys will just start wilding out.
Okay.
So it has a bad rep because people call it just positional training, but there's this coach called Greg Souders.
Okay.
He is the head coach of Standard Jiu-Jitsu, and they are doing like very well in the American ADCC Open scene.
All right.
So this guy, he started with an approach that no, not only positional training, we also want to make the positional more focused.
Okay.
And I'm sure you do this because everyone does this, and that's why this is such a big
Yeah.
issue. Because he claims that only he did
Okay,
it.
only,
did it.
yeah.
So in positional training, let's say we are doing sparring from half guard, right?
Yeah.
So now it can go really wild if his bottom
Of
guy is
course.
attacking
Yeah.
submissions and
Yeah.
he's not allowing you to pass, and now your goal was only to get chest to chest, but
Yeah.
you're unable to do that
Yeah.
because there's so much chaos happening. He's using butterfly hooks, things like that.
Yeah.
So what he has done is he says that we add more constraints
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
person on the bottom or top, that you have to just look for underhooks
Yeah.
from the top.
Yeah.
And the bottom guy has to just defend the underhook, and I'll try to find different methods to open
Yeah.
you and or occupy, get a body lock, things like that. So he's done that for every position. Like from mount also, the bottom guy is just allowed to bridge roll,
Yeah.
try to escape that way, and now you're trying to pin their hands. Just the hand fighting part is a
Yeah.
and he calls these games. So he's reduced every position to these small games that you can play. that is very good way of training. Like
Definitely.
I believe that's
Like,
very.
I resonate with that completely, and that's
you
how.
do that a lot.
Yes.
It's yourself, right?
Yeah,
Even
but I don't know if he's obviously like invented it or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
But
So that's the gripe that people have that. Okay, you
We
did
all
not
do this,
invent it.
yeah.
We all do this, but he's like, no, nobody trains. And what he added is that we never drill. That is the sketchy part.
All right. So the way I look at it, training is actually a spectrum. You have complete mechanical drilling on one end, where the other guy is not reacting at all, and you're the one who's doing every single movement.
Yeah.
Right? So that way you learn your body positioning and whatnot, and how to move and whatnot. Right? That definitely shouldn't be majority of your training.
Yeah.
That should be time spent just for you to learn how to position your body. As soon as you're done with that, you need to now start going into the next bit of training. So one end of the spectrum was drilling, one end is complete free sparring, right? And that should also not be done too much,
Right.
because that takes a beating on your body and it can leave you disheartened and everything like that. So the in-between stuff is where you spend a lot of time, and this end of the spectrum, from drilling, it will go to a small game like winning an underhook,
Right.
creating an angle. And then the other end of the spectrum might be like taking that underhook, coming up all the way to a dogfight, finishing,
full
right?
positional
So
sparring.
yeah, exactly. So you need to figure out where on that spectrum you need to be to essentially like understand the position
Yes.
completely. And I think if you're doing that, you've got training covered.
Yeah, and this is where like a good coach comes in, because he can know which batch or which group of people require which spectrum.
At what
of
part?
training, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, if you just go the Brazilian way, where
Yeah,
they just
where-
do these leg drags,
That's it. That's
bullfighters
just
for
pointless. That's just pointless.
And-
Because I feel what they're trying to do in those cases is they're trying to do their conditioning work.
Right.
But I think we can move forward from that, where we definitely separate our conditioning sessions from the grappling sessions.
Right.
Like the grappling session should pretty much just be only technical work, and a lot of your cardio and everything comes from you becoming better at the sport. If you're more efficient, you automatically have better cardio. And aside from that, if you want to do conditioning, it makes sense to like get on a bicycle or something and like crank out that. But honestly, for a sport like jiu-jitsu, I don't see the benefit. Something like wrestling, which is a lot more short and intense, there's a lot of benefit in doing that.
Right, because there are two schools of thoughts here also. One, like Marcelo Garcia would say, just do jiu-jitsu to build jiu-jitsu cardio.
And that works.
Yeah, it has worked for him for sure.
Works for sure. But I think once you see more and more true professionals come into the sport, they will start separating their training. And then you will have to be playing catch up if it's always only jiu-jitsu. But given our sport, like I said, the demands of the sport are such that spending more time on the mat and getting better at it makes a lot more sense if you're doing conditioning maybe like once a week or something.
And also now, because guys like coming with better wrestling, better top pressure,
Yeah, exactly.
need to have more better conditioning for them.
Correct. And the only way to do that is artificially pumping up through doing work, like on a bike or something.
Yeah. Bike is very efficient because you
It's-
don't have knee stress. by
Exactly.
running
So
and
there's no
things like
stress on the joints and everything, and that's why I recommend like people
So how
do
long
that.
have you been doing this now? You have added this new
Yes.
part, right?
So this camp we actually haven't done it too much because we're still like experimenting and playing around. We were doing. We have a phenomenal strength and conditioning coach who's done his PhD at Cardiff. So
Knuckle, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So both of us have been in discussion, and we just plan our training session such that the previous camp for ADCC, what we did was we put people on a bike for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And they would go 1 minute on, 1 minute off for 10 whole minutes, and just crank out how much ever power they can in that meantime.
So just power.
Yeah, and we just wanted to see how the results are. We found that we were getting too drained out from it.
Right.
There's another philosophy in training. So one is your very intense stuff, and the other is also steady state cardio, specifically
Zone
something
2.
called zone 2,
Yeah.
right? For me, what I found is having done zone 2, my ability to recover between rounds definitely improved. Because you're tapping into your fat oxidative capacity, and that is done through your mitochondria. So this takes a lot of time to get into your system. Like it takes about like 6 months to a year when
Right.
you do it regularly, and it's about 45 minutes of just like low intensity cardio that you do. I found that also to be pretty draining to begin with, but then you get
used
acclimatized
to
pretty
it.
like quickly. The main reason I actually want them to do it is there are like direct studies that support it with longevity in life and so on and so forth.
Right.
And somehow if you look at it,
Aerobic conditioning is always
exactly, and somehow if you look at it, like I feel as human beings, the way our joints are designed, like long distance running kind of favors us,
Yeah.
like for the most part. So I think doing that also makes you like more happy and stuff. So,
All
so we just
our-
try to incorporate it more than anything, not.
All our ancestors were these
Yeah,
runners. long
exactly,
distance.
right? So on some level for the most part. So given that, we thought, okay, let's try and incorporate this, see how we feel. Again, it's all feel based. If we feel too like destroyed by it, we scrap it out of the program.
So, coach, you were also the guy who, for the longest time, was with me in this train of staying single. You see where I'm going with this? And,
Interesting, yeah.
Commit, not very ready to commit.
Yes,
you
I
were having
definitely,
that.
I definitely was in that place
Yeah.
where I just didn't want anything to do with marriage. But until I met my wife Nida,
Yeah, guys, news break. Rohit got married last year, right?
yes, last year.
Year he got married to Nidha, who is also here in the background. So, how has this been, coach? Talk about it.
Yeah, very interesting to be honest. So like again, like you said, I was at a point in my life where like being in a relationship itself was out of the question. Getting married was, I don't know, somewhere just so far fetched in my head. And but last February is when I happened to meet Nidha, whom I've known for a while because we're like related, like distantly. And so given that we were at a housewarming ceremony, and I happened to meet her after a long time.
Do jiu-jitsu guys go to those housewarming?
Surprisingly, this was one of my close uncles, so I was kind of like strong-armed into it. So I'm like, okay, fine, let me go there. And I met Nida, and we started talking, and she told me that she teaches yoga, and she's been practicing it for a long time.
check.
So more than a check mark, it was just like, okay, we have something to talk about,
common.
given that like we've not been connected for this long. And she was interested in doing martial arts as well. So we exchanged numbers, and then we started talking, and that's when I realized that the way she teaches yoga and does yoga, it's very similar to the way I teach and do jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
So
you took some classes?
both. It was like both ways. She would come to IJJ in the evenings and some days in the mornings, and I would teach her jiu-jitsu, and she would teach me yoga as well. And that's when I realized like there's so much of a sync in the way we think, and I think from there on it was, yeah.
Smooth sail.
Yeah,
So
it
it
was.
is
I mean,
often-
like from the moment I saw her itself, I was like, okay, like there's something happening here which I can't explain. So,
It's often the guys who are single for too long, they get married directly. Like you wouldn't even hear like a dating period.
hey, but
or
I waited
something.
quite a while. Like, I mean, I was
How
like
long
pretty
is
much
this?
35 when I got married. So I think given that, I did fight off for a long time, and then after that, yeah, I think you just need to meet the right person. And
So how has this affected your training quality? How has this affected your general life? Like,
when we started off initially, I used to go to the gym not twice a day, but it used to be every morning. But Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the evenings, I
Yes,
would go.
we had classes.
My evening classes took a hit. That being said, there was lesser
Workload.
training frequency, but the training quality improved because I felt I was at a point in my life where everything I did, I identified with jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Like that became my existence. She broke me away from that,
Yeah.
and she told me that there's so much more to me. That there's a side that I'm completely like cutting off just because I'm focused only on jiu-jitsu. And initially, obviously, there was going to be a lot of friction, and there was, because in my head I'm like, oh fuck, but then have this much time has passed. Like after 1 year, I realized like this last year, both as a gym, as a business, as well as a team, I think we've grown the most. And I think like the biggest contributor for that is Nida.
Nice. Yeah, if you're in a good mental state, it
Exactly,
translates into your
and
teaching.
that's what she
because
helped me immensely with that. And
some days I have like bad sleep in the night, and then I go in the morning, and then I catch myself doing these things more, where I'm like more aggressive, like
yeah,
lesser
exactly.
kind that day.
Yes, yeah.
It happens.
So she just made me look at these things
Yeah.
and give me that perspective. And
Nice.
Yeah,
that
that was like-
cycle, that breaking the cycle thing is
Correct.
so important.
Yeah.
And I think we as jiu-jitsu guys or MMA guys, we get trapped in this.
we get trapped in that, and there's all this ego bloat that happens, and like it's just like she just took me away from that completely. And
it becomes so ingrained in your personality, in your identity that you cannot
that's
generally
exactly what,
practice.
and it's hard to shrug off. Like, so that was the key switch for me. And honestly, I'm in a very happy place in my life now.
It shows, bro. Like the interactions with you that I have like in past few days.
Yeah.
Very different and very positive and
Nice. I'm
very
glad. I'm
energetic
glad.
also.
I'm glad.
Otherwise, you would be trained.
Yeah, exactly. I would be drained all
Yeah.
the time, and this is what she would complain of. You're just coming back drained. What's the point if you're not spending that time with family,
Right.
right? And she made me like realize that, and my parents are getting old too, so it made sense for me to like be home longer.
And you have done this for like 10, 12 years. So
Exactly.
It's no point to
Yeah,
just
there is
overstress
no
yourself.
point. So that's when I realized like, okay, it actually made me take a look at training also as a whole and try to make training as efficient as possible for everybody, because given that everyone in IJJ right now in the advanced batch are of a certain age where I know that they have family commitments and they can't afford to come twice a day. So we needed to make that one session like bang on, like as much as we can get out of it. And I think we've hit a good like spot.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, the performance shows. We have people winning ADCC Opens, India, right? India Opens, and
Yeah.
you haven't competed in Strangle though, Devesh, right?
He hasn't done a strangle.
I don't know the Strangle. Yeah, but in Strangle also, Devojit has been winning and
Yeah.
crushing it.
Yeah, he had a good showing in the last one. Yeah.
So overall, IJJ always comes with a strong squad. Like that's one of the top 3 names.
Yeah,
always
that
in
I
tournament
still
list.
feel like we want to maintain that standard. There's no way that we're giving up on that. And part of it is like you said, like staying ahead of the curve on some level, because otherwise we'll just be just another gym.
Yeah,
Right. So
dependent on a black belt to come teach.
yeah,
them.
so that's never.
This is something which I find very cringe about Indian MMA, Indian jiu-jitsu scene. That they are so over-reliant on these black belts to come teach them and show them something which they've
Yeah,
never seen.
and
Because everything is on the internet.
everything
bro.
is there for you. You
just
just
make an
need to
effort.
find out. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I feel like most gyms, the head coach is not being a student of the game.
Right.
Like he needs to be at least on top of things and constantly being updating himself with new information of some sort. It doesn't have to be only jiu-jitsu. Like for example, what I'm doing is right now I watch a lot of wrestling matches and see what part of their game I can apply here and see what they do differently. And I think if you can just catch on those small things, you start evolving automatically.
That takes effort and that takes understanding also.
Exactly.
So
And-
to build that, you'll need to invest time.
Yeah.
But the reason is that they treat the black belts as like God. Like they
That
have this
is the-
complex whenever a Brazilian
Exactly.
guy is coming
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, this hero worship
Yeah,
should
hero
stop.
worship, yeah.
That just should stop. And people should understand that they're just another human being with the same flaws and so on and so forth.
like I'm so malleable in this way that I feel
Yeah, you
like,
definitely
like a lot of people say that, oh, I've gotten black belt from this, I've gotten blue belt from this guy, so my black belt should also. It's fine like if you have very
No,
close personal
of
ties
course,
and
yeah,
shit like that. But other than that, if you're trying to just make that relationship, force that relationship,
I think that also doesn't work out well. And at the end of the day, I think you as a person are also somewhat constantly changing. And if you're not seeking out that
and
knowledge
nowadays
which
the
you
belt
want,
don't even matter. You see how
It really doesn't.
You're rarely wearing it.
exactly, yeah.
So who gives you black belt or brown belt?
It really doesn't
shouldn't-
matter. And I don't know why they're so desperate to get a belt. Like that
Too
is
many
the-
brown belts in the country right now.
Exactly, and it seems like there's a race, and that's when I'm like, man, I actually don't want to get my black belt at this point.
The race
Like,
to become second competitive black belt in India. That's the race right now.
exactly.
Yeah. So if you become a black belt, would you call yourself competitive? Will you have like
No, I
anything
definitely
attached to it?
wouldn't, because
Would you
on-
even write it on your Instagram?
No, I would not.
Right. You briefly mentioned the ADCC camp before in the podcast.
Yeah.
So we have just finished the ADCC camp over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I was part just for 1 week, but all these guys have been doing it for how long? now?
This is the longest camp we've done. Actually, we've done it for 9 weeks now.
9 weeks. That's
Yeah.
around 3 months.
Not 3
Four-
months.
2.5.
Yeah, roughly, right? With the first 2 weeks just being easing into it. But I think as a chunk of a camp, this is the biggest we've done, because up until now it was always about 6 to 7 weeks, where 4 weeks would be intense and then 2 weeks we would.
Right.
But this we've just been hammering away for 9 weeks. So
So how do you design a camp? I'm interested in learning that as well.
So most of my camps are obviously I catered specifically to the advanced guys, and I try to see what everybody else is doing in said competition, and I have a game plan in my head saying that okay, this camp we're going to focus on this one thing. Like last ADCC camp, it was hand fighting for the wrestling part, pretty much. A lot of it was go behinds and everything like that, front headlock go behinds, because our shots weren't that good yet.
Right.
So it was all about hand fighting, trying to get behind.
Short offense
Yeah,
positions.
and short offense, get behind. As soon as we go quad pod, finding ways to break people down, and then forcing half guard. So that was the theme for that camp. This camp, it's obviously a lot more diverse. So it was a little all over the place, to be honest. But the main thing I wanted to work on was bottom work, which is starting from referee's position and preventing people from scoring.
Right.
Once I knew that I was getting that out of the way, like for the first 6 weeks at least, the classes were designed on that, and everything branching out from there supplementarily. So, for example, wrestling, what was required? In this case, it was quick shots, hand fight, but don't spend time hanging around in ties and like waiting there. Just get in.
Sweep singles.
Yeah,
and
just
then
do
singles,
whatever's
yeah.
required. I showed them like specific stuff, but try to hit all of that with a certain level of intensity. Main focus on this camp was also getting that intensity level
Right.
and being able to sustain that intensity for give or take like 10-12 minutes. And that's where we found it a little difficult, I guess.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
challenging given the nature of ADCC matches also. Like
Yeah.
trials, you have 6 to 7 matches.
Correct.
Sometimes back to back.
Exactly. So having seen a couple of Devesha's matches from like Thailand and everything, quad pod defense became like the main thing, or just like from referee's position.
Right.
So because from there we can gravitate out, like you win the position and then you're on top and then you fight from there. So
Yes.
that was one of the things that we focused on.
Nice. So we are going on a trip together, guys. We are going to
Yeah,
first
it's gonna be
Singapore.
fun. We haven't ever done a trip together. That's
ADCC
the
trials, overseas trip.
overseas
There are
trip.
a lot
correct.
of
Yeah, we've done like local stuff.
inland
Yeah,
trips.
exactly.
So, in true definition, a trip, guys, if you guys know what I mean, we are going to Singapore. There we'll be competing at ADCC trials, and then we'll bounce from there to Phuket.
Yes.
We'll be again doing some Pohada work. So, have you been to Thailand before?
Yes, we have. Last year we went to Thailand. We had a competition in Bangkok, so a couple of them competed there, and we flew out to Phuket from there. And so, I think like Phuket's going to be like very like interesting for us because it feels like it's an upscaled Goa pretty much. Like similar vibes, but just better roads and
Better people also
Better
sometimes.
people on some level. See, I think they know that you're a tourist.
Yeah, so
Maybe
they'll
they're
be
speaking
nicer.
shit behind your back, but in your face they're good. So I think it's okay. It's a win-win.
Nice. So let's talk about the ADCC trials.
Yeah.
This is the first Asian trials that's happening. What do you think? Which teams will dominate? Have you glanced at the names? of
Unfortunately,
people?
I'm a little out of the loop when it comes to what teams are good. and-
How are you thinking of IJJ's chance there? We have 3 people competing from.
Yeah,
IJJ.
we have a very good chance given that, again, this is just from me watching certain
Yeah.
matches, is I still find that in trials, there's a lot more guard pulling that happens, whereas in the ADCC finals or in Worlds, you see a lot more people doing the stand-up stuff.
Right.
And I think what we've done is the way we've compartmentalized our training into just focusing on a lot of hand fighting and Greco, couple that with forcing them to pull guard and then dominating in overtime with quick shots. I think as a recipe for
Yeah,
success,
that's a
I
great
think
strategy.
it's tactically sound. So I feel like, and we've also tried to iron out as many mistakes that people are making, and most of the mistakes that our guys were making is just from posture and stance, and we really tried to like fix that this time. So I'm sure that we won't see like any unforced errors. So given that, we should be like we should see good matches.
Yeah, the biggest difference that I've seen now is that you guys are super hard to score on.
Yes,
And that
exactly, and we
ADCC
pride ourselves on
yeah.
that now because we've spent a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. And that is one of the key aspects of winning
Correct.
an ADCC match.
Exactly.
Even if you get taken down, if you're not allowing other
Yeah,
person
because
to
it's the
score,
hardest
you know.
rule set to actually score on, and we
Yes.
should be trying to capitalize on that.
Yes.
So,
Fun question. On your Jiu-Jitsu Mount Rushmore, who are the 5 or 7? Kitne hote hain? 4? Oh shit.
4 guys.
Four-
Oh shit,
four
that's
people.
small.
Don't include Helio Gracie because he's
No,
like
I'm
too-
not. I'm not including. I actually may not even include.
Hickson.
No, I
Hickson
think
you
Hickson
have
is
it.
definitely there. It's
Let's keep it 2 early people and 2 modern people.
how early are we talking?
Like, you can go as far back.
Okay.
Jigoro, Kano and all, you can also include. And just briefly tell me why do you think that this is up the spot, although we know.
And are we okay? All right. This is just jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, 4 people.
Okay. I think I would definitely put. I think, see, the thing with grappling is the rule set has changed over the years so much. But I think Maeda was definitely
Let's so Maeda.
a guy, because he's the one that actually set the ball rolling by flying out to different places and actually putting himself out there and fighting. Again, all of this is subject to a lot of speculation. Who knows what actually happened in history? But I
in the
think
known
because he set
history,
the
yeah.
ball rolling, I think Maeda definitely has a place.
Yeah.
After that, I think the guy,
He was the first Japanese Kryonch.
Yeah.
He left his dojo.
Yeah,
went
but I
out.
think he also did a lot of wrestling and everything like that, so which is
Yes.
why I like it. It's not just, I think, a farce where you say that, oh, this is for the little guy. That's absolute bullshit.
Right.
Like, I don't think any martial art should actually be based on you being the fragile guy.
That was the greatest marketing.
Exactly,
Gracie
right?
Lewis
Because I
did.
think every martial art has an aspect of conditioning and strength and so on and so forth, which you should be trying to like maximize. So given that it's Maeda, then Hickson, because I think he brought in all of those things. So I think that's two from the older.
He had like what 400 undefeated record.
Again,
400
up, it's a start,
Okay.
right? Because
All dojo
we-
fights also included in
included, and who knows? Like who knows? Winners get to write history
Yeah.
on some level, right? So given that, but he definitely deserves a place because he was ahead of his time in thinking. Like he knew that, like the concepts of connection and stuff like that, nobody actually spoke about. And the other thing is also the element of mystery also is there, and I think that makes it a little more appreciated,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think that's important. That is important.
that. Just take your secrets into
Exactly,
the grave.
right? So that mystery makes it like very interesting for
Okay,
sure.
two modern
So,
people now.
Hojo,
Roger Gracie.
and I don't want to say this, but it's Gordon just because
Okay.
he's undeniable.
Okay.
That is the only reason.
So
right?
it was not even meant to be competitive people who have had like massive influence on the sport. So mine, I have
Okay,
like one
all-
name that I would include there. That's Eddie Bravo.
Oh,
For the
phew,
influence
for the
that he-
influence is massive.
Like
for
today
sure.
we are doing Nogi Jiu-Jitsu, it's because
It's
of this
for
guy.
it's because of him and Sheikh Tang.
Yeah.
Like, it's because of these two guys.
Mo Jasim also a little bit.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, those were like my Mount Rushmores as well, like the Jigoro Kano as an older
Yeah, for sure,
person.
yeah.
And then Hickson definitely.
Yeah.
And Hodger just because he was the elite competitor.
I feel he's the only guy who did the same thing over and over again and beat you. That was one.
Yes.
You knew what you were getting finished with. And the other thing is, it was a 10-year reign. And I think,
Both across Gi and Nogi.
yeah, so I feel like in my eyes, he's the best
Gordon is
competitor.
never equaling him. Doesn't matter how many Nogi fights he wins.
Yeah, and
just
the
because of
reason is also because Gordon doesn't have humility. Like maybe he has, maybe he's in person he is, and
But that's not an
he
excuse.
needs to, he wants to play the heel and so on and so forth. I understand all of the marketing stuff,
Do
but
you
at the
believe
same,
that? Do you believe that he's playing?
I don't know.
heel?
I don't know. That's what people say. Like when they interact with him in seminars and stuff, he seems like the nicest guy.
But
That's
then
because you're
seminar-
giving money,
Yes.
right? So, but again, people say that with fans he's good. But again, there's obviously a money element to that also.
If you're not good with the
But
fans,
the
you'll
kind
get-
of aura that Horja has, I have not seen that with anyone in Jiu-Jitsu. The kind of calmness that he talks with and everything
I
like
think the
that.
key is to not talk too much. Just do your thing, shut
Yeah,
the fuck up.
and also like when you talk also he succinctly puts everything, and
Did you see his podcast with
Lex Friedman.
Lex
Yeah, and that was really very, very good for me.
Lex was asking some stupid
Some
questions.
stupid questions, of course. Like I think like he's one of those again.
Every
celebrity
single
black
time he was
belts
going
type.
back to, but you said that Mount is the best position.
Yeah, exactly.
Why
Like,
won't
without
you-
understanding what Horja was actually meaning.
Yeah.
And I agree with Horja. Like Mount is the best
It
position.
is the best position.
Right.
So yeah, these four people are. So Eddie Bravo just because
Eddie Bravo, and then so it's Horja and Eddie.
Hodger and Eddie.
Okay.
Eddie
Yeah,
just
honestly, I feel
because-
like you're right because I don't think Gordon deserves a spot on the Rushmore yet because he's not retired. We need to see how he ends his career. Like,
What if he just dies
Yeah,
of all the
ex-
steroid
exactly.
abuse and
Or,
then
I mean, he just, like-
becomes the Chris Benoit figure of
correct, exactly.
the-
See, right at this point, I feel like there's so much for people to catch up on in those heavier divisions. I
Yeah.
still feel like he's going to win.
Right now, there's nobody like Victor Hugo was a good, but he dominated him also. I thought Victor Hugo. will
See,
come
again,
the
like,
closest.
yeah, exactly. I feel like he is also, he's got a good specific game, but at the same time, there are a lot of holes in his game also, which Gordon doesn't have.
Yeah. So going forward, what do you think? Gi Jiu-Jitsu, Nogi Jiu-Jitsu. What's the future of Jiu-Jitsu in general? And especially this question: can Jiu-Jitsu ever become a spectator sport, or like a profitable sport?
Okay, first one, Gi Jiu-Jitsu, definitely yes, because from my experience and also from people around the world, I think when you wear a uniform and a belt and everything, it makes you feel more like you're part of a community and that you're doing something, and that's why you see more gi classes actually being filled worldwide.
But then we have the argument of the 10th planet guys who are part of the like cult community, but with
Definitely, right? I think they appeal to a niche
Yeah.
like crowd, but I think somebody who's like 35 years older, gi just makes sense. It's easier on the body, it's slow, and so on and so forth. Yes, there's a lot of pulling, but you don't have to do it that way, right? So there'll always be a place for gi jiu-jitsu to practice because people still practice judo, and that's way more hardcore. So I think like jiu-jitsu is so much easier on the body, but comparatively, I think it'll never have that appeal because the only place that it can go is get more convoluted.
Yeah.
That's just the name of the game.
Even the rule set where they do not allow reap. I feel,
Exactly.
especially at the brown and black level. Now they've done it in the no gi.
Yeah.
But in gi still, and that makes just being on
It
the
just,
bottom.
yeah, exactly, right? And there's so many ways to game the system, and there's cloth involved that I think as a spectator sport, it can never get there. No-gi, though, is obviously going to be interesting because now we're seeing wrestling come back in. And people will soon start applying wrestling philosophy a lot better. Like, I see some B team videos and there's like basic hand fighting knowledge, but they still don't understand the complete philosophy of it. You'll see that though.
They're also
But I
catching
think when that comes in, things should start getting more simplified. So I think it'll be a little more spectator friendly for sure.
There's this guy called Joseph Breza. Have you seen his YouTube?
No.
So he keeps shitting on the B team for the wrestling. He's like, Nicky Ryan, all the things that he's doing is shit, because
Yeah,
I'm a
see,
grappling coach.
I understand. See, we
Jiu-jitsu
can't dismiss as shit though, to be honest. See, it's just that some parts of their game are still so advanced.
Very
Maybe
advanced.
they don't need this as much. But I think for a gym and team like IJJ, we have to try and stay ahead of the curve in some elements. So that's why I would probably do a lot more wrestling and say that, okay, I'm able to critique
Right.
their moves and say that, listen, they can do these better. But at the same time, no, of course, we're not going to like diss on people that kind of paved the way for us on some level.
Yeah,
So
and submission plus wrestling, the submission wrestling game
exactly,
is different.
I'm still like so torn about like, it's just that the rule set has to get refined to a level where I also can think a little deeper about it. Right now I feel the rule set is all over the place. It's so hard to score.
Yeah.
Like if I
We'll
focus on
need-
scoring, I cannot submit.
We'll need to do
Like I
those-
found that in my rounds when we were doing like, so we were doing like 15-minute rounds
Yeah.
at one point, splitting it up, where we were doing like 4 minutes of stand up and 8 minutes of ground and then 3 minutes of stand up again. In those rounds, I realized that because people can just prevent you from scoring points, you're working so hard that I can never score submissions. It's
and
so
even
difficult.
if you go for submissions, you end up losing points.
I
because
lose,
in
yeah,
the-
exactly. I lose position then. So
Positions.
I'll always choose position over that. So I think if the rule set gets refined with time, then we can really like come up with a clean strategy where how you link up wrestling and submissions and everything, and that will make it interesting. So I feel like that way I'm very, very interested in no-gi jiu-jitsu, and I think with time it's also probably going to become like a little more like spectator friendly also.
Awesome. So, coach, I want to leave on this note. I want you guys, I have a humble request. I want you guys to produce more vlogs from IJJ because
We'll definitely like try.
because
Yeah.
we want to see a good standard content
Yeah.
on the internet,
For
especially
sure.
Indian
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu internet.
I'll definitely take this into consideration
And-
seriously. And the other thing is also about the DVD. Vijay and I are
do
definitely
that.
like thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's just that we want to also occupy a certain place in the community where we want to give knowledge which is not there before.
Yeah.
Right. That's our goal.
You need to just release it and people will automatically find
I
it.
guess
because people are on
that's
lookout.
the way to go about it also. Yeah.
India's first competitive black belt also just released. Siddharth,
He's released a DVD.
He
Nice,
did it in
that's good.
Hindi, which is a great
But
marketing
that's
strategy.
amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing strategy. Yeah.
But you guys should just.
Yeah, he's at the
get
forefront of like just business
Marketing.
and stuff. Like
Yeah.
great stuff. Great stuff.
All right, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast.
I hope you guys did, like,
you
because-
learned a lot of stuff. And, yes,
And thank you so much for having me. Like,
Always a pleasure, coach. And hopefully we'll have some great matches, good times.
yeah,
And
looking forward to ADCC and
trials.
cornering these guys. And
it'll be so amazing for you to watch as a spectator also.
definitely,
because
definitely.
you'll be
But
right there.
honestly, that being said, it's way harder being a coach and in the
true, that's
corner.
true,
It's
that's
just
true.
the nerves are way more intense than somebody who's actually like stepping on the mat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nothing but respect to everybody that's going out there and risking it all to like compete and
Yes.
looking forward.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time. Os. Thank you. Amazing. How was it, guys?
Oof, fun.
Just came
Lot of
like,
fun.
yeah, it's good.